Listen, when you build a training facility designed to teach the galaxy's finest how to punch each other in the face without dying, you need rules. Lots of rules. The kind of rules that get laminated, translated into 800 languages, and posted on every available surface because somebody, somewhere, will absolutely try to bring a plasma cannon to a fist fight. Station Helios Prime housed one such establishment, a sprawling complex of training halls, simulation chambers, and medical bays that saw disturbingly heavy use. The Combat Academy, as it was diplomatically named, existed for one purpose: teaching military personnel from across known space how to fight without relying on the fancy toys their respective civilizations had spent millennia developing. No energy shields, no genetic enhancements, no psionic abilities, no cybernetic implants that could calculate your opponent's kidney trajectory before you even threw the punch. Just you, your opponent, and whatever your species happened to come with standard. The philosophy was simple, really. Strip away all the advantages, and you discover what a fighter truly has when everything else fails. Noble sentiment. Looked great on the recruitment posters. In practice, it meant a lot of bruised egos and species who suddenly realized their impressive military records depended heavily on technology doing the heavy lifting. Instructor Dax stood at the front of Training Hall 5, his scales catching the overhead lights in that particular way that screamed, "I am very impressed with myself." He was saurian, which meant he looked like someone had taken a monitor lizard, scaled it up to 2 meters, given it opposable thumbs, and convinced it that this made it the apex of creation. His species hailed from Dravis Prime, a planet with gravity so light you could probably achieve orbit by jumping enthusiastically. "Today," Dax announced, his voice carrying that special tone instructors use when they are about to make your life significantly worse, "we begin baseline combat assessment. You will demonstrate your species' natural fighting capabilities. No enhancements, no abilities, nothing but what evolution gave you." He paused for effect, sweeping his gaze across the assembled students. 30 beings from 20 different worlds, all wearing the same standard-issue training gear, all looking varying degrees of confident, nervous, or confused. The Saurians looked smug. The Matherian crystalline entities looked perplexed, probably wondering how exactly they were supposed to throw a punch when they communicated through resonant frequencies. The humans looked bored. Well, one human. There was only one in this particular cohort. Rhea stood near the back, arms crossed, expression suggesting she was mentally cataloging everything wrong with this situation and composing a strongly worded complaint she would never actually file. She had that look humans got sometimes, the one that made more perceptive species suddenly remember urgent appointments elsewhere. Her instructors back on Earth had called it her pre-violence face. "Special attention," Dax continued, "and oh good." His eyes had found Rhea. "Must be paid to species who lack natural advantages. Those who come from worlds with minimal threats, who evolved without significant predation, who somehow stumbled into sentience through sheer fortunate accident." Several students shifted uncomfortably. Nobody wanted to be the example of evolutionary participation trophy. Humans, for instance. There it was. Rhea's expression did not change. This was impressive, considering what was probably happening behind those very calm eyes. "Earth," Dax said, warming to his subject the way instructors do when they have found a target, "is classified as a Class 8 world. Moderate climate, abundant resources, single large moon providing stable rotation, by galactic standards, practically a resort planet." He smiled, showing altogether too many teeth. "And yet humanity insists on participating in combat training alongside species from Class 2 death worlds. Amusing, really." Ulani, standing 2 spots to Rhea's left, made a small bubbling sound that her translation unit rendered as a nervous laugh. She was Aquarian, from the deep oceans of Thalassos, and had the distinction of being one of 3 students in the class who actually liked humans. mostly because Rhea had helped her recalibrate her moisture suit during orientation and had not once made a joke about fish out of water. Something to share, Cadet Ulani. Dax's attention swiveled like a turret acquiring a target. No, Instructor. The bubbling intensified. Her translation unit was working overtime. Good. Dax turned back to the class. Let me be absolutely clear. In this training hall, you follow my rules. You fight clean. You fight fair. You use only what nature provided. Anyone caught enhancing themselves in any way will be expelled immediately and sent back to their homeworld with a notation in their file that will ensure they never work in any official capacity again. Do I make myself understood? Chorus of affirmatives in various languages, tones, and frequency ranges. Excellent. Dax's smile widened. We begin with demonstrations. I need a volunteer. Nobody moved. Classic. No volunteers. How disappointing. His gaze swept the room and landed exactly where everyone knew it would. Rhea, front and center. Rhea uncrossed her arms and walked forward. Her movements were economical, precise. The kind of motion that came from someone who had spent a lot of time learning exactly how much energy each action required and refusing to waste a single joule more than necessary. She stopped at the designated circle on the training mat. Dax circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey, which was ironic, considering his species had evolved in an environment where the most dangerous predator was occasionally falling off a tree branch. Tell the class. Rhea, Dax said, still circling. What special abilities do humans possess? Any venom? Toxins? Extraordinary strength? Speed? Natural armor plating? No, Instructor. No, how unfortunate. He stopped directly in front of her. Then what exactly makes you think you belong here, among species who actually evolved to fight? The room got very quiet. Even the Metherian stopped resonating. Rhea met his eyes. Her voice remained level, conversational, almost friendly. Instructor, I would respectfully suggest you review Earth's classification again. Class 8 refers to technological development, not environmental threat assessment. You might find some interesting details in the ecological survey. Dax's scales rippled. Annoyance, most likely. I am well aware of Earth's classification. I wrote the curriculum module on human limitations. Did you include the part about the persistence hunting, or the part where we evolved to chase prey until it literally died from exhaustion? Irrelevant to combat application. Or the part where our planet tried to kill us with everything from microscopic organisms to megafauna, so we developed immune systems that treat invasive species like a personal insult. That is enough, Cadet. Rhea held up her hands in a gesture of peace. Just trying to provide context, Instructor. You asked what makes me think I belong here. She paused, and her smile did not quite reach her eyes. Fair warning, though. I do belong here, and I follow rules, all of them, exactly as written. Something in her tone made several students take a step back. Dax's laugh was sharp and dismissive. How reassuring, a human who follows rules. Tell me, Rhea, do you know what we call species who rely on rules to survive? Civilized? Weak. He moved closer, invading personal space in that way dominant predators do to establish hierarchy. In real combat, there are no rules. There is only survival. And something tells me that when faced with actual danger, humans fold. Besk, the insectoid standing near the equipment racks, made a clicking sound his translator rendered as, "Oh, this is going to end badly." He had the advantage of compound eyes that could see roughly 300 degrees, which meant he had an excellent view of Rhea's hands. Those hands that had just shifted position slightly, weight redistributing in a way that suggested she was calculating angles and force vectors. Noted, Instructor, Rhea said softly. I'll be sure to remember that rules don't matter in real combat. See that you do. Dax turned away, addressing the class again. Today's assessment will proceed in stages. First, basic striking techniques. Second, defensive maneuvers. Third, live sparring under controlled conditions. You will be evaluated on form, efficiency, and control. Excessive force will result in immediate failure. He demonstrated a basic combination: strike, block, counter. His movements were technically correct, but lacked real power. Low gravity, evolution meant saurian muscle density was impressive by their standards, but unremarkable by anyone else's. "Pair up," Dax commanded. "Humans." He glanced at Rhea. "You will pair with me. I want to personally ensure you understand the limitations you are working with." Ulani's bubbling took on a distinctly worried quality. Rhea stepped onto the mat. "Understood, Instructor. No powers, no enhancements. Just what nature gave us." "Precisely." "And just to confirm," Rhea added, her tone still perfectly respectful, "excessive force results in failure." Did I stutter? "No, Instructor. Crystal clear." She settled into a ready stance, and something about the way she moved made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "One more thing, though." "What?" "I gave you a warning. Just so we're clear later when everyone asks if you had fair notice." Her smile was pleasant, almost friendly. "Don't piss me off." Dax laughed. Actually laughed. "Cadet, I assure you, whatever you think you are capable of, I have seen worse from species 3 times your size." "I'm sure you have, Instructor." Rhea's stance did not change, but something in her eyes did. Something that made Besk's compound eyes dilate and Ulani's moisture suit start working overtime. "I'm sure you have." The assessment began. The thing about watching other people fight is that it gives you time to think, time to observe, time to notice exactly how an instructor's teaching style evolves from firm but fair to openly hostile over the course of 30 minutes. Dax worked through the other students with mechanical efficiency. He corrected stances, demonstrated blocks, and generally performed the duties expected of someone paid to teach violence. But there was an edge to it, a casual cruelty that manifested in joints twisted just slightly too far during demonstrations, in throws executed with just enough extra force to leave students gasping on the mats. The Saurian students, naturally, received gentle corrections and encouraging nods. Everyone else got the full experience. "Pathetic," Dax announced as a Rendorian cadet struggled back to his feet after a particularly aggressive demonstration of a hip throw. "Your species claims warrior heritage, yet you move like sediment." Again. The Rendorian, whose name was Holt and who had the misfortune of being built like a brick made of other, smaller bricks, gamely reset his stance. Dax swept him again, harder this time. Holt hit the mat with a sound that made several students wince. "Better," Dax lied. "Next pair." This continued. The pattern emerged clearly enough that even the Matherian crystalline entity had picked up on it, which was saying something considering they perceived time slightly differently than carbon-based life forms, and were probably experiencing this whole situation as a smeared continuum of suffering. Ulani got thrown into the safety padding hard enough to trigger the impact sensors. Besk received a critique of his species. Primitive neural structure that was both scientifically inaccurate and spectacularly rude. A Helion cadet with bioluminescent skin patterns got mocked for lighting up like a distress beacon when nervous. And through it all, Rhea waited her turn, watching everything with the focused attention of someone taking very detailed mental notes for a future conversation with a superior officer's superior officer. "Rhea," Dax finally called after he had worked through every other student. "Your turn. Let us see what humanity's vaunted adaptability looks like in practice." She stepped onto the mat. Around them, students found reasons to pay very close attention. Some, like Ulani, looked concerned. Others, like the Saurian cadets, looked entertained. Besk had positioned himself near the emergency medical alert, which showed either excellent tactical thinking or a severe lack of faith in how this would end. "Standard engagement drill," Dax announced. "I attack, you defend. Remember, excessive force is grounds for failure. Control is everything." He smiled his too-many-teeth smile. "For you, anyway. As your instructor, I must sometimes use appropriate force to properly test your capabilities. Appropriate force, Rhea repeated. Got it. Begin. Dax moved fast, credit where due. The strike came in clean, textbook perfect, aimed at Rhea's center mass with enough speed to test reactions. She deflected it. Simple parry, redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. Basic physics, basic technique. Dax's follow-up came faster. Rhea slipped it, minimal movement, economical footwork. Another strike, another deflection. The instructor's movements became sharper, more aggressive. Still technically within bounds, still technically instructional, but the gap between teaching and attacking was narrowing rapidly. You are too passive, Dax announced, punctuating his words with strikes that Rhea continued to deflect or evade. Real combat requires action, not merely reaction. You must learn to... Rhea's counter was perfect, textbook perfect. She caught his extended arm, used his momentum against him, and executed a joint lock that would have made her hand-to-hand combat instructor back on Earth weep with pride. She held it for exactly 1 second, applying exactly 0 excess pressure, then released and stepped back. Like that, instructor? The training hall got very quiet. Dax's scales flushed darker, embarrassment or anger, possibly both. Fortunate timing, again. They reset. This time, Dax did not bother with the pretense of instruction. His attacks came faster, harder, each one designed to overwhelm rather than teach. And Rhea, following the rules precisely, defended. Every block clean, every deflection efficient, every counter measured and controlled. And that, apparently, was the problem. You are holding back, Dax hissed between exchanges. No one is this controlled naturally. You must be using enhancements, neural implants, reflex boosters, something. I'm not, instructor. Liar. He committed to a heavy strike, putting real power behind it. Rhea redirected it into the mat, where it left a small crater in the reinforced surface. Scan her, Dax snapped at one of his assistant instructors. Full spectrum. I want to know what she is using. The scan took 15 seconds. Rhea stood completely still while sensors swept her from multiple angles, analyzing everything from neural activity to bone density. Results negative, the assistant reported. No implants, no enhancements, baseline human, all readings normal for her species. Dax stared at the readout like it had personally insulted his family lineage. Then he turned that stare on Rhea. Impossible. No baseline human moves like that. Maybe you need to update your curriculum on human limitations, Rhea suggested, her tone still respectful, still professional. I'm happy to provide reference materials. What you are, Dax said slowly, is arrogant, disrespectful, a disgrace to this academy. He moved closer, abandoning his fighting stance entirely, just getting in her space. Perhaps you need a lesson in humility, in understanding exactly where humans rank in the galactic hierarchy of actual warriors. Several students shifted nervously. Ulani's bubbling had reached frequencies that her translator had given up trying to render into words. Rhea's expression remained calm. Instructor, I would remind you that I have followed every rule exactly as stated. I have shown appropriate control. I have demonstrated proper technique. You have demonstrated nothing but barely concealed contempt. Dax's voice dropped lower. You think you are special? You think because you can deflect a few training strikes that you understand combat? I have forgotten more about fighting than your entire species has ever learned. I'm sure that's true, instructor. Here is what I think, Cadet Rhea. I think you are hiding something. I think you are afraid. I think when faced with a real threat, you will break. Rhea took a slow breath. Let it out. Instructor Dax, I need to give you one more warning. Oh, another warning. How terrifying. I'm serious. And she was. Every student in that hall could hear it. You are making a mistake. Walk it back. End the assessment. Give me a failing grade if you want, but stop pushing. Dax laughed. Actually threw his head back and laughed. Or what? You will file a complaint, cry to the commandant, face reality, human. You are weak, your species is weak, and I am going to prove it. Besk, near the emergency alert, made a clicking sound his translator rendered as, "Oh, ancestors, preserve us." Ria's shoulders dropped slightly, not in defeat, in resignation, in the posture of someone who had tried diplomacy and watched it fail spectacularly. "Okay," she said quietly. Fair warning was given. Just remember that part later. "Enough talking," Dax snarled. "Let us see how you handle real combat. And this time, cadet, I will not be holding back." He attacked. And Ria stopped pretending she needed to be careful. Here is something the galaxy had not quite grasped about humans. They are persistence hunters. Not because they are fast. Plenty of species are faster. Not because they are strong. Plenty of species are stronger. But because when a human decides something needs to be done, they will simply keep going until physics or death intervenes. And sometimes, not even then. Dax's first real strike came in fast and mean, aimed at Ria's head with enough force to concuss. She was not there. Simple sidestep, but the kind of sidestep that spoke of someone who had spent countless hours learning exactly how much space a body needed to occupy to avoid incoming trauma. His second strike followed immediately. She deflected it, but this time she did not just redirect. She used his momentum to pull him off balance. Not much, just enough to make him stumble half a step. It made him angry. The next combination came faster. Strike, strike, sweep, all of it designed to overwhelm. Ria moved through it like water, like someone who had fought people bigger and stronger her entire life, and had learned that size meant nothing if you could not land a hit. "Stand still," Dax snarled. "No," Ria replied, and something in her voice had changed. The respectful cadet was gone. What remained was something that had been carefully leashed and had just slipped the collar. She did not attack. Not yet. She simply defended. But her defense had transformed. Every block now came with a counter. Every deflection left Dax slightly more off balance. Every evasion put her in a better position while forcing him into worse ones. And she was barely breathing hard. Dax, for his part, was beginning to show signs of strain. Low-gravity evolution meant saurian endurance was impressive for short bursts, but flagged quickly under sustained effort. Meanwhile, Ria looked like she could do this for hours. Probably because she could. "Fight back," Dax demanded, frustration bleeding into his voice. "You said excessive force was grounds for failure," Ria reminded him, ducking under a wild haymaker that would have been embarrassing even without witnesses. "I'm just following the rules, Instructor." That did it. Dax abandoned technique entirely and lunged, both hands reaching for a grab that would have let him use his size advantage. Ria stepped into the attack instead of away, which violated every instinct Dax had about how prey was supposed to behave. She caught his wrist, redirected his momentum, used his own mass and velocity against him. Basic principles, the kind they taught in every combat course across the galaxy. Except when Ria did it, Dax found himself airborne, rotating, and then meeting the training mat with considerable force. The impact sensors went off. Multiple of them. Dax lay there for a moment, probably inventorying which parts hurt, and discovering the answer was most of them. Then he rolled to, his feet, scales flushed nearly black with rage. "You dare!" "I followed every rule," Ria interrupted, her voice calm. "Basic throw. Controlled application of force. You attacked, I defended. That is literally what you instructed us to do." Around them, students had backed away to give the situation room. Ulani looked torn between horror and something that might have been vindication. Besk had his manipulator claw hovering over the emergency alert. The Saurian students had stopped looking smug. "Instructor Dax," came a new voice from the entrance. Everyone turned to see Commandant Loris, a Centaurian whose forearms and natural diplomatic inclination usually kept Academy incidents from escalating into actual disasters. "Perhaps we should—" "This is my training hall," Dax snapped, not taking his eyes off Ria. "My assessment, my rules. Technically, Rhea said, and, oh, that was a dangerous word. These are the Academy's rules. You just enforce them, and I have broken exactly 0 of them. Dax's response was to attack again, this time with genuine intent to harm. No more pretense of instruction, no more holding back, just rage and wounded pride translated into violence. Rhea met him halfway. What followed was not a fight. Fights implied some degree of parity, some chance that either participant might prevail. This was a demonstration, a comprehensive, systematic dismantling of the assumption that humans needed advantages to compete. Rhea did not use exotic techniques. She used fundamentals, executed with a precision that came from a species that had spent millennia figuring out how to kill things larger and more dangerous than themselves, using nothing but determination and spite. Every strike Dax threw, she countered. Every grab, she escaped. Every attempt to use his size advantage became another opportunity for her to demonstrate that leverage and momentum cared nothing for muscle mass. And through it all, she was talking. "This is called a joint lock," she explained conversationally while Dax howled in pain. "Human joints are vulnerable, so we got very good at manipulating them. Release. Reset. This is a nerve cluster strike, non-lethal but extremely effective." Dax's left arm went temporarily numb. "And this," she pivoted, swept his legs, and put him face first into the mat, "is just good old-fashioned physics." Dax tried to rise. Rhea put a knee on his spine, not heavily, just enough to make the point that she could keep him there if she wanted. "Yield," she said quietly. "Never," Dax gasped. "Instructor, you are outmatched. You have been outmatched since this started. The only reason it has lasted this long is because I have been following your rules about excessive force." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "But you told me earlier that in real combat, there are no rules. So which is it? Are we following rules, or are we not?" The training hall had gone absolutely silent. Even the Metherian had stopped resonating. "What, exactly," Commandant Loris said slowly, "is happening in my academy?" Rhea stood up, stepped back, and offered Dax a hand up. He ignored it, rolling away and climbing to his feet through sheer stubborn pride. He was breathing hard. His scales showed stress patterns. Multiple impact points were already darkening with the saurian equivalent of bruising. Rhea, meanwhile, looked like she had been out for a light morning jog. "Assessment complete, Commandant," she said. "I believe Instructor Dax was testing my ability to handle sustained combat situations. I followed all protocols. No enhancements used, no excessive force applied, all techniques within approved parameters." Every single word was technically true, and also comprehensively damning. Dax opened his mouth, probably to object, then seemed to realize that anything he said would make this situation worse. The combat footage would show everything. Every attack he had thrown, every rule he had bent or broken, every moment Rhea had demonstrated restraint he had abandoned. "Medical bay," Loris said flatly. "Now, Instructor Dax, you look like you need a checkup." "I am fine." That was not a suggestion. Dax limped toward the exit, his pride in tatters and his body not far behind. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at Rhea. Whatever he saw in her calm expression made him leave without another word. Rhea turned to face the Commandant, standing at attention. "Ma'am, I apologize if my conduct was inappropriate. I attempted to de-escalate multiple times." Loris studied her for a long moment. "I am aware. We record everything in training halls for precisely this reason." She glanced at the assembled students, all of whom suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. "Class dismissed. Except you, Rhea. We need to have a conversation about proportional response and why terrifying your instructors is generally discouraged." "Yes, ma'am." As the students filed out, Ulani bubbled something her translator rendered as, "That was the most beautiful and horrifying thing I have ever witnessed." Besk clicked his agreement. "Humans are absolutely nightmare creatures, and I'm so glad she is on our side." "I can hear you," Rhea called after them. "We know. They called back, and somehow it sounded like a compliment. The disciplinary hearing lasted approximately 15 minutes, which was either remarkably efficient or a sign that everyone involved wanted this situation resolved before it became a galactic incident. Commandant Loris sat behind her desk, two of her four hands folded professionally while the other two manipulated a holographic display showing the training hall footage from multiple angles. She had watched the entire sequence 3 times now, and her expression suggested she was having complicated feelings about what constituted appropriate educational methodology. "Rhea," she began, "I have reviewed the combat footage extensively." "Yes, ma'am." "You violated exactly 0 regulations." "Yes, ma'am." "You demonstrated textbook perfect technique throughout." "Thank you, ma'am." "You also traumatized an instructor and caused me to completely reevaluate our threat assessment protocols for human cadets." Loris paused. "I am not certain whether to commend you or assign additional training on diplomatic restraint." Rhea maintained her neutral expression. "I did provide multiple warnings, Commandant." "You did. The footage confirms this." Loris closed the holographic display. "Which brings us to the larger issue. Instructor Dax is currently in medical receiving treatment for bruised ribs, strained ligaments, and what our doctor describes as comprehensive humiliation requiring no medical intervention but possibly therapy. I used minimal necessary force, ma'am. I am aware that is somehow worse." Loris leaned back. "Do you know why we have the no enhancement rule, Rhea?" "To ensure fair assessment of baseline capabilities, ma'am." "Partially. Also because we assumed that without enhancements, most species would be operating on relatively comparable levels." She gestured at the now dark holographic projector. "Your performance suggests our assumptions about human baseline capabilities were catastrophically incomplete. To be fair, ma'am, Instructor Dax comes from a low-gravity world with minimal predation. Humans evolved on a planet that was actively hostile to survival. Different environmental pressures produce different results. Yes, I read the updated threat assessment our xenobiology department prepared after watching your footage. Apparently, Earth scores significantly higher on the environmental hazard scale than previously documented." Loris's expression was dry. "The report uses phrases like persistence predator ancestry and abnormal pain tolerance, and my personal favorite, inadvisable to antagonize." "That seems accurate, ma'am. Instructor Dax has been reassigned to theoretical combat analysis. He will no longer teach practical courses." Loris studied Rhea carefully. "You understand this was necessary, not because he was wrong about rules, but because he forgot the first principle of teaching. Know your students." "Yes, ma'am." "He assumed human baseline meant human weakness. He learned otherwise." Loris stood, signaling the meeting's end. "You are dismissed, cadet. Try not to hospitalize any more instructors. It creates excessive paperwork." "I'll do my best, ma'am." Outside the office, Olani and Besk were waiting. They had apparently appointed themselves Rhea's unofficial escort, which was either touching or a sign they expected more incidents. "So," Olani bubbled, "did you get expelled?" "No, Dax got reassigned." Besk's clicking translated as laughter. "Of course he did. Did they at least acknowledge you were right?" "They acknowledged that human threat assessments need updating. That is the most diplomatic way of saying, we accidentally recruited a species of apex predators I've ever heard," Besk observed. They walked through the station corridors, passing other cadets who suddenly found reasons to give them space. Word had spread fast. By tomorrow, every student in the academy would know exactly what happened when you pushed a human past warnings into action. "Question," Olani said carefully. "Were you actually holding back during that fight?" Rhea considered this. "Define holding back." "That is not reassuring. I followed all the rules about excessive force. I used appropriate technique. I demonstrated proper control." Rhea smiled slightly. If he had wanted to see what humans do when we stop following rules, he should not have made rule following the assignment. Besk's entire carapace shuddered. Remind me never to see what that looks like. Deal. They reached the cadet quarters. Other students gave them space, respectful or nervous, or both. The Saurian cadets who had looked so smug earlier were conspicuously absent. So what now? Ulani asked. Now we continue training. Learn more techniques, become better at controlled application of force in appropriate situations. Rhea paused at her door. And maybe the instructors learn that humans do not need powers or enhancements to be dangerous. We just need a reason. What reason did Dax give you? Besk asked. Rhea's smile was sharp. He told me not to rely on rules, so I stopped letting rules protect him. She entered her quarters, leaving Ulani and Besk in the corridor. I am never making that human angry, Ulani announced. Agreed, Besk clicked. Although I am extremely glad she is in our class. Imagine having her as an enemy. They did not have to imagine long. Somewhere in the academy, threat assessment protocols were being completely rewritten. New warnings were being added to human cadet files. Instructors were being briefed on the importance of not antagonizing species whose evolutionary history involved outsmarting everything that tried to eat them. And in training halls across the station, students were learning a valuable lesson. When the instructor says no powers allowed, and the human says do not make me angry, maybe listen to the human. Because humans do not need powers to be terrifying. They just need you to break the rules first.